the body of and the lining stitched together with the zipper in between. And I want to just emphasize again that I've started and stopped the stitching 1/2 inch in from the flat top part on both ends of the zipper, so you should be able to fold the fabric back. If your basting extends further in, attaching the zipper, that's okay. You can rip out that little part of the basting, but the stitch should stop 1/2 inch from the top. I also wanted to point out that I've used a different zipper on the second bag that we're working on, and it has a much narrower zipper tape than the pink zipper, and so you can see in order for my zipper teeth to be placed farther than 1/2 inch down from the edge of the fabric, I've had to scoot this zipper over or down from the top a much larger distance than the pink zipper because it's a narrower zipper tape. So again, just to emphasize that this distance between the edge of the fabric and the zipper tape isn't an exact amount. It's really dependent upon the size of your zipper. So now that we have this sewn together, we want to go ahead and clip this seam, and that's going to release some of this tension on it so that when we turn it right side out, it will lie smoothly because we have a lot of bulk and it's pretty stiff. So I'm going to go along the entire width and snip. It's okay to snip into the zipper tape. The zipper tape, especially if it's a much wider zipper tape, can be pretty bulky, and you really want this to lie smooth. So I'm going to go along and clip, making sure I'm stopping before the seam. I never want to cut through the seam with my clips. And I'm going to go ahead and clip, I don't know, every 3/4 inch or something, all the way around this entire curved portion, because that's going to allow, again, that's going to allow this curve to be nice and smooth when we have this all turned right side out. So I have that done, and it's going to grab, I'll show you on this other bag where I have already gone ahead and snipped both sides, so you can see both sides are snipped, and just releases any tension on that seam. And now I want to take the bag and turn it right side out through this gap. It doesn't matter if it's which side, but because you have a gap on both ends. I'm going to go ahead and turn this bag right side out. Getting really close. Very exciting. And okay, so now we have just these two free ends that don't have finished fabric. So what I'm going to do is actually fold each end of the fabric in 1/2 inch, and that's why we stopped our stitching. Again, if your basting extends past, you can rip the basting out. Going to fold it in 1/2 inch on either side and pin them together. You can match the seams because these should be the same distance, and you can actually measure yours. I'm not measuring right now, just because it's just so you can actually get a clear view of what I'm doing, but you can measure to make sure this is exactly 1/2 inch, and you want it to be pretty well pinned. On the end here, the extra zipper tape that you have that extends past the end of the zipper stop, you can actually just go ahead and tuck into this 1/2 inch seam that you're folding there. So there we go. It's kind of up to you how you want it to fold to tuck in there. You want to make sure that you're keeping this end, or this corner sharp. There we go. And it's not absolutely necessary to tuck it in. I mean, you can leave it free if that, you know, if you don't mind this sort of raw edge look showing. Don't trim it really close because it can fray and help dislodge the zipper stop, so you don't want to trim it. The other option is if it's not easy for you to tuck this free end in, you can sew a tab of fabric to the end here. Once we have this all assembled, we're going to be sewing a tab of fabric to this end of the zipper, but you can sew a tab onto both of these ends as well. But I like to just fold it a little bit and sort of tuck it in. I think it's an easy way to have a nice finished edge. And again, being careful that you're keeping this sharp, but allowing the rest to kind of tuck in there. So there we go, that's what that looks like. I have both sides folded, you can see, and they're both meeting at the top, and the end of the zipper tape is tucking in. So now that I've done that, I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing on this end, except for on this end, I'm not going to tuck the zipper tape in. The zipper tape is going to extend, and that's why we stop the stitching there. So on this end, it's actually even easier. So I have that end folded now. Go ahead and fold this end in. Again, making sure that's sort of creating a crisp edge. And then folding in the middle. One thing you can do is to fold each side separately and press it down and then go ahead and pin it to the other side. I don't really have a way to get my iron in here for this video to get it in so you can actually see in this small space. So I'm going ahead and doing sort of the cheater version and doing it all at once. But if you're finding this awkward, you can fold each side independently, press it down to the wrong side ½ inch, and then pin it to the opposite side. And go ahead and put a fair number of pins in here because I want this end to stay nice and even. And now that I have this all pinned, now I am going to actually go in and press. And this is where you want to be careful. You don't want to press on the plastic heads of your pins at all. It's why it's sometimes nice to work with glass-headed pins. Like I said, you can press and then pin together, but here, just for the sake of this demonstration, I have pinned and then I'm going to go in and press, just to help, help keep this positioned how I want it to be so that it's nice and crisp. And then once we've done our top stitching, we can go back in and press again so everything is super crisp. So you don't have to worry about getting in there and getting it totally perfect with this pressing, but I just want to help kind of keep things in place. Then what we're going to do, so I'm actually going to press all the way around, going ahead and pressing, making sure you never want to touch your zipper tape, zipper teeth with your iron. That can warp the zipper teeth so that your zipper won't work. So be really careful when you go around. But I'm going to go ahead and press everything down so that it is away from the zipper tape, and then run a line of stitching all the way around the top edge, around this curve, and all the way around. So that's going to stabilize the zipper in place, make the zipper extra sturdy, and it's going to finish this raw edge of our purse, which is the only raw edges that we have left. So as I said, now that we have this all pinned in, I want to go ahead and go in and press. So I have my iron, and the key thing is that we don't want to hurt the zipper in any way. So because I have an ironing board instead of a flat ironing surface, I'm going to actually slide this onto the end of my board, which I think makes it a little bit easier. And then I can bring the iron in and press the iron up right near the edge of the zipper. I'm going to apply steam because I think that's a good way to sort of help set a press without pushing the iron in too much, because I really don't want to touch in any way this zipper tape because I have the plastic feet. So I'm setting my iron close to, but not touching, the teeth and shooting in some steam to help press. I have sort of, as I set this in here, I'm pulling the outer fabric away and the inner fabric away from the zipper teeth. This is one instance where sewing your zipper with your teeth farther away from your seam can make it a little bit easier to work in this instance. So ended up with maybe a 1/4 inch between my teeth and my seam, and that can be, you know, you can go larger than that. It doesn't really matter what that distance is. And then on my ends as well, so I'm going to do the same pressing all the way along both curves. And then on the ends, I'm going to go ahead and bring my iron in here. And it's a little bit difficult to fit under my camera here, so this isn't the most perfect example, but I'm being careful that the end of my zipper isn't going to touch those pins, and kind of treating this top part of the bag where I have the pins, treating it kind of like it's zipper tape, because I want to be careful I'm not going to melt the pins onto my iron. I'm working with a denim, and most of the fabrics that you would pick for this bag, it's not going to hurt the fabric at all to iron over the pins. They won't leave a permanent mark. You won't be able to see that you have ironed there. If you are working with a fabric that you would worry about leaving those marks, or that might be you know, that you want to go ahead and iron before you pin, that is certainly also an option. And so in that instance, what I would do is, here we have on the other bag, you can go ahead and go in and fold one side down 1/2 inch. Again, you do have zipper tape near here, so you want to be careful with what you're doing always when you have the zipper around. There's nothing more frustrating than getting your entire bag sewn and realizing that you have melted some of the zipper along the way and it won't zip, and you have to rip it all apart and reinsert your zipper. So there I've gone ahead and pressed across most of this distance. I can maybe wiggle things around and get a little bit more of it in there pressed with this 1/2 inch seam allowance, again keeping my zipper tape up and out of the way. So I've done that on the lining, and I'm going to go ahead and do that on the fabric. This is one of the reasons why I actually suggest a quilting cotton for your lining instead of using a slippery lining fabric between the construction of the pockets and then this edging. It's really helpful if it actually holds a seam or holds a press. And many lining fabrics, traditional lining fabrics, don't hold presses very well, or you need a low temperature iron to deal with them, so you don't have to worry about melting them. So that's one reason why it's nice to use cotton for both the outer and the lining, honestly. So now we can see this is what it looks like if I go ahead and press both those edges first, and then after I've done that press, I can go ahead and pin them together for sewing. Again, matching my seam lines. So I'd go ahead and add, you know, several more pins, but you can see that is also one option that might make this a bit easier, again, depending on your fabric and how easy it is for you to get in there and press things. So you can totally do that as well. Then for this, same thing, I would go around and press all the way around before we go in and start top stitching. Okay, now we're going to sew the top stitching all along the top edge of the purse, and you can see that I have put on my 1/4 inch presser foot, and that's just because for this top stitching it doesn't need to be an edge stitch or right next to the edge of the seam, especially not along this top part where it might be tricky to make sure they're aligned exactly perfectly at the top. So a 1/4 inch works really well. And also using this 1/4 inch foot means that we don't have to worry about it bumping up against the zipper tape when we are stitching along the edge of the zipper. Another option is using your zipper foot. That also works well. And you might be able to use your normal presser foot. It depends how far away your zipper tape is from the edge of, from this top edge of your fabric. I ended up stitching mine fairly close, so rather than worry about my presser foot bumping against my zipper tape, I think using the zipper foot or the 1/4 inch foot is a nice alternative. So you can see I'm just stitching my way along, and this is finishing these top seams for us. That's why we went ahead and tucked the fabric in, and going along, and I'm gonna stop when I get to this top edge and then pivot. Makes best way, I think, to get this sharp curve. And I think, you know, for this top part, I used this 1/4 inch distance from the top, but I think maybe sewing along my zipper tape, I'll use 1/8 of an inch, and my 1/4 inch foot has an 1/8 inch guideline as well. It doesn't really matter. Whatever you think is going to be prettiest for your bag. You can go through and do many lines of top stitching. You can stitch it as close or as far away as you want. I do recommend doing this line of top stitching because it's going to help just make your bag as sturdy as possible. That's the reason we've done sort of all this top stitching all over the place. And as I'm stitching, I'm kind of feeling with my hands as I guide it, I mean, that the body fabric and lining fabric are folded down from the seam as smoothly as possible, and that's what we went ahead and pressed. But if you had a hard time getting your press in, or your fabric doesn't hold the press really well, you can just make sure you're feeling that as you go, or pause, double check, go back to your stitching. That's something to be aware of. And again, when I get to the top here, stop the needle in and pivot. You can go back along this top part and stitch again. So I'm going through with this 1/4 inch, which does leave a bit of fabric ruffle at the top, where a closer edge stitch might make it look more like we actually sewed this seam instead of just top stitched it in place. But it's up to you. So you can go back and stitch another line of stitching. this side part here isn't a place that's going to receive a lot of stress, this top part, because you have your handles are going to be hanging a bit further down, and you don't have the torque from, you know, zipping and unzipping the zipper, like, which is the reason that we're doing this top stitching along the other sides. So see, it's just pretty smooth and easy. Take your time. This isn't very sharp of a curve, so it's pretty easy to sew. And I'm just going to continue till I have gone all the way around. And then a couple back stitches to lock that in place. And there we go. And you can see that because I used a different thread in my bobbin, it's totally an option. So from the inside, my bobbin thread more nicely matches the light colored lining I chose than on the top. So I have the different color top thread and bobbin thread, and I think that just makes for, you know, a nice small detail, but the thread matches then in both my lining and my top, even though they are disparate colors. So now the body of our bag is totally finished, and we can go ahead and prepare our handles to stitch our handles on.